Have you ever had a conversation where you walked away thinking, "Wait, how did I agree to that?" Or maybe, you bought something you didn't plan to, said yes to something you weren't totally comfortable with, trusted someone you barely knew, and only realized afterward something felt off. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You probably didn't make that decision entirely on your own. Someone used a technique, maybe intentionally, maybe not, that bypassed your logical brain and influenced you before you even knew it was happening. And in this video, I'm going to show you 30 of the most powerful mind tricks ever discovered. These aren't fun facts. They're real-world tools used by politicians, salespeople, cult leaders, copywriters, therapists, social engineers, and yes, probably even your best friend. They're subtle, they're effective, and in the wrong hands, they're devastating. But here's the twist. These same tricks can be used for good, to build trust, to deepen influence, to improve your communication, if and only if you understand how they work. But there's one thing I haven't told you. Before we even got to this part of the video, you already fell for one of the 30 tricks. I used it on you right at the start, and I'm going to reveal exactly what it was after we hit trick number 6. And when I do, it's going to reframe how you see this entire video, and possibly every conversation you've ever had. I used to think I was making my own decisions, that I was immune to manipulation, especially the subtle kind. I was wrong. It wasn't until I started studying the psychology behind influence that I realized how often I was being nudged, without even noticing. But once you see these tricks for what they really are, you'll start spotting them everywhere. In ads, on dates, in negotiations, in casual conversations with people you trust. And once you can spot them, you can use them, or protect yourself from them. Here's how this works. I'm breaking down all 30 mind tricks into 5 categories: influence without permission, belief shaping in real time, emotional hijacks, conversational control, full-blown mind bending. You'll hear the trick. You'll see how it works. You'll learn how it's used in real life, often without anyone realizing it's happening. And every few minutes, I'm going to pause to help you see the deeper patterns. Because this isn't just a list. These are real psychological tools. And when we get to trick number 30, it's going to flip everything you think you know about persuasion. Why? Because trick number 30 isn't even a trick. It's a framework. It doesn't just influence people. It makes them think the decision was theirs all along. That's where we're headed. While you're watching, ask yourself, which of these tricks have I used without realizing? Which ones have been used on me? Drop them in the comments. I read every one. Alright, let's dive in. These first 6 tricks are how people influence you without asking permission. And one of them is already working on you. Let's see if you can spot it. Section 1. Influence without permission. Have you ever had someone start liking you more right after you did something for them? It doesn't seem logical, does it? We're taught that giving earns goodwill, that generosity builds connection. But psychology shows something far stranger. The trick. Ask them to do you a favor. Let me tell you a story. Benjamin Franklin once had a fierce political rival. No matter what Franklin did, the man despised him. So instead of trying to win him over with kindness or debate, Franklin asked to borrow a rare book from his personal collection. Just a small request. The man agreed. Franklin returned the book with a polite thank you, and everything changed. The man who once hated him became a lifelong supporter. That's what we now call the Benjamin Franklin effect, the idea that people grow to like you more after they've done something for you. It flips what we think about influence. When someone does us a favor, their brain needs to make sense of it. I must like this person, why else would I help? It's a classic case of cognitive dissonance. Salespeople use this. So do therapists. Even romantic partners, the "can you do me a small favor?" moment isn't about need, it's about bonding. The trick isn't manipulation, it's understanding that we justify our actions after we take them. And speaking of justification, let's move to something sneakier. Have you ever been told not to do something, and felt your curiosity spike? You were just warned, and yet, your brain went, but what if I just peek? That's the power of anti-suggestion. Trick number 2. Anti-suggestion. Imagine a sign that says, "Do not press this button." Even if you weren't thinking about it before, now it's all you can think about. The reason? Our brains don't process negation the way we think. When you hear, "Don't think of a pink elephant," your mind has to imagine a pink elephant in order to suppress it. The image comes before the filter. Magicians use this in misdirection. Marketers use it when they say, "This isn't a limited time offer," even though it absolutely is. Parents do it all the time. "Don't eat that cookie." Guess what happens next? The trick works best when there's emotional tension. The more forbidden something feels, the more we want to explore it. That's the paradox of restriction. We want what we're told we can't have. Use it carefully. Or better yet, watch how it's used on you. And that brings us to something you've definitely experienced, probably today. Trick number 3. The name repetition anchor. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had a stranger use your name in a sentence, and suddenly, you felt closer to them? It's not just politeness. It's psychological anchoring. Our names are deeply wired into our sense of identity. When someone says your name, especially early in a conversation, it triggers subtle signals of familiarity and trust. It bypasses defenses. There's a reason top salespeople and cult recruiters will say your name 3, sometimes 4 times in a conversation. Not in a creepy way, in a rhythm. "Hey Jordan, great question. You know, Jordan, that reminds me of something." "I totally get it, Jordan. I'd feel the same." It works. Every time. Unless you're actively watching for it. What's wild is that you can use this too. In conflict. In persuasion. Even in high-stakes negotiations. Just make sure it's natural. Forced name repetition feels robotic. And remember, the person using your name may not just be being nice. Let's shift gears. Have you ever done something because you thought it was normal, only to find out later it wasn't? That's the phantom norm at work. Trick number 4. Phantom norm. The phantom norm is one of the most silently powerful persuasion tactics, because it doesn't tell you what to think. It just suggests what everyone else is already thinking. You walk into a meeting. One person says, "Well, everyone here agrees we should move forward." Wait, did they? Who agreed? When? No one stops to question it. Because our brains are wired to conform to perceived norms, even phantom ones. That's why marketers say, bestseller. It's why creators say, most people love this. It's why parents say, everyone your age is doing it. Even if none of that is verifiably true, the illusion is enough. The fear of standing out, of going against the invisible grain, is primal. And the scariest part? You'll often convince yourself it was your idea. But what if someone could actually plant the idea before you even had it? Trick number 5. Conversational inception. This is one of the most powerful and most misused tools in human communication. It works like this. Instead of telling someone what to believe, you ask a question that presupposes the belief is already true. When did you start feeling like that wasn't fair? Read that again. It assumes you felt something wasn't fair. It skips over if and jumps straight to when. The moment your brain hears it, it starts scanning for examples. You've already accepted the frame. This is conversational inception, and it's happening in politics, therapy, journalism, even dating apps. Here's another example. What was it that finally convinced you? That one line. It bypasses resistance. It assumes agreement. It builds a subconscious narrative. Lawyers use it in cross-examination. FBI negotiators use it in crisis talks. And yes, cult recruiters use it, too. This technique doesn't push you. It lets you build the argument against yourself. But there's a way to go even deeper. Trick number 6. Pacing and leading. This is the bridge between influence and control. Let's break it down. You meet someone new. Instead of trying to dominate the conversation, you match them. Their tone, their energy, even their body language. That's called pacing. Once you've mirrored their world, you gradually start shifting the direction, slowly guiding the conversation toward your goal. That's leading. It sounds subtle. It is subtle. And it's incredibly effective. Imagine someone starts a conversation saying, "You're probably wondering what this is all about. You're watching because something made you curious. Maybe it was the title. Maybe you've been in a situation like this before." That's pacing. Then, by the end of this, you'll see influence in a whole new way. That's leading. Salespeople do this constantly. You're someone who cares about value. You're thoughtful. You don't jump into decisions. Pacing. Which is why this option is actually perfect for the way you think. Leading. It's not magic. It's neuroscience. When someone reflects our internal state, we trust them. When they guide us from there, we follow. And here's the kicker. If I've done any of these 6 tricks well so far, you probably didn't even notice. But influence without conscious awareness. That's just the beginning. Because the next set of tricks doesn't just influence decisions. They bypass them entirely. They reshape the way you see reality, sometimes in real time. And trick number 9? It's something politicians and con artists have been using for decades to shift your beliefs, your memory, and your sense of choice, without ever touching a single fact. That's next. Section 2. Reprogramming beliefs in real time. Some influence works by nudging decisions. A little push. A gentle frame. A suggestion. But then there's another layer. Deeper, quieter, and far more powerful. This isn't about making someone do something. It's about shifting what they believe is true about you, themselves, or the world around them. And it starts with something as small as a single word. Trick number 7. Semantic priming. Have you ever walked into a room and suddenly felt off? You couldn't explain it. Nothing happened. No one said anything rude. But your energy shifted? That's semantic priming at work. And it happens faster than thought. Here's how it works. Say the word sharp right before someone sees a person's face. They're more likely to describe that person as intelligent, or focused. Now switch that word to cold. They're more likely to say unfriendly or distant. The word primes their brain to filter reality through that lens. Advertisers use it all the time. Think fresh, clean, natural. Those don't mean anything specific, but your brain fills in the gaps. It makes the word feel real. But it gets deeper. A therapist might say, when you first began healing. Not if you're healing. Not whether you're ready. The word began primes the mind to assume healing is already underway. Priming is fast, invisible, and automatic. Change is not what you think, but how you think. But sometimes, it's not what's said that changes the belief. It's what's left out. Trick number 8. Missing information framing. Let me tell you a quick story. 2 people apply for the same job. They have identical resumes, except one of them has a line that says, volunteered with local youth programs. The other one doesn't. The hiring manager immediately favors the volunteer, assumes they're more generous, team-oriented, trustworthy. But here's the twist. The second applicant also volunteers. They just didn't include it. This is the power of missing info framing. Our brains don't just process what's there, we assign meaning to what isn't. When you hear, this medication is 90% effective, you rarely ask, what happens in the other 10%? When a dating profile says, career-focused, driven, independent, your brain might fill in the blanks. Probably not emotional. Maybe distant. But they didn't say that. You assumed it. This trick isn't just used by marketers or politicians. It shows up in casual conversation, in how we describe ourselves, even in how we remember our own past. We are constantly influenced by what's missing. And when you want someone to believe they're choosing freely, even when they're not, that's when you use the next one. Trick number 9. Forced choice illusion. Ever ask a kid, do you want broccoli or carrots? They choose one. And you, the adult, smile, because they just did what you wanted all along. They ate vegetables. That's the forced choice illusion. It gives someone the illusion of agency, while every option leads to the same outcome. Politicians do this with policy framing. Sales teams do it with pricing packages. Would you like the premium plan or the standard? Either way, they're moving forward. But here's the deeper layer. Once someone chooses, their brain reinforces it. Because we don't just want to be right, we want to be consistent. Which leads us perfectly into our next trick. Trick number 10. Future pacing. This is a psychological move used by elite speakers, therapists, cult leaders, even hostage negotiators. It sounds like this. A few weeks from now, when you're already noticing how much calmer your days feel. Next time you face a tough decision, you'll remember how easily you handled this. That's future pacing, subtly placing the person inside a future outcome where they've already succeeded, healed, agreed, or committed. It bypasses analysis. It assumes the future, and your mind begins making it real, because imagining it lights up the same neural pathways as actually living it. Even more dangerous. Once someone mentally steps into that future, they begin adjusting their beliefs to match it. Think about that. You can change someone's future behavior by anchoring them in it now. But the glue that holds this trick together isn't imagination. It's commitment. Trick number 11. Commitment echo. This one's sneakier than it sounds. It starts with a micro yes, a small verbal agreement. Would you say honesty is important to you? Of course. Then comes the echo. That's why I knew you'd understand this decision. Now the person isn't just nodding, they're locked in. Why? Because we are wired to stay consistent with our identity. If we say, "I'm generous," then back out of a donation, our brain goes into discomfort. So we adjust to stay congruent. This is why sales scripts include lines like, "You seem like someone who values taking action. People like you tend to follow through." It's flattery, sure, but it's also a trap dressed up like a compliment. And it's not just others we do this to. We do it to ourselves. Every time you say, "I'm not someone who gives up," you're building the wall of belief. Stronger, tighter, and once that belief is personalized, you're no longer debating an idea. You're defending your identity. Which brings us to the big one. The one we teased earlier. Trick number 12. The IKEA effect. Let's say you buy a $35 coffee table from IKEA. It takes you 4 hours to assemble. Frustrating. Confusing. You mess up twice. But when it's done, you're weirdly proud of it. Someone offers you $100 for it. You say no. Why? Because now, it's yours. Not just legally, psychologically. You built it. You suffered for it. You struggled with it. And now your brain assigns value based on investment, not logic. This is the IKEA effect, a documented cognitive bias that shows we overvalue things we've put effort into, even if the result is average. But here's the twist. This applies to ideas, too. If you've invested time defending a belief, writing about it, arguing for it, even if it turns out to be flawed, you'll likely still cling to it. Because letting it go wouldn't just mean changing your mind. It would mean admitting that you were wrong to care about it in the first place. This is why people double down in debates. Why relationships that started toxic still drag on. Why we keep fixing broken systems instead of letting them go. Once your brain invests in an idea, even just a little, it stops seeing it as optional. It sees it as part of you. And if you don't think that's dangerous, ask yourself this. What have you built in your mind that you now defend just because you built it? So now you've seen it. The trick that doesn't just change others, it changes you. But what if you could flip it? What if you could weaponize the IKEA effect in reverse? Not to deepen belief, but to unravel it. To make someone slowly walk away from something they once felt was part of them, and feel like it was their idea? Because that's exactly what the next section is about. What if you could use someone's own words, their past beliefs, even their memories, to make them walk away from a belief they once would have fought to defend? Not through confrontation, not through proof, but through a toolkit so subtle, they wouldn't realize they'd changed their mind, until it was already gone. We're about to step into that. Section 3. The Belief Hacker Toolkit. Some tools push, some pull. These slip in through the side door. If the last section was about reprogramming how someone sees a belief, this one is about disarming their ability to defend it. You're not arguing. You're not confronting. You're simply rearranging the mental furniture, while they think you're just making small talk. Let's start with a trick so subtle, it feels like empathy, but it's actually a cognitive trap. Trick number 13. Reverse objection framing. Let's say someone tells you, "I just don't think this makes sense." The average person would argue back, explain, defend, rationalize. But not you. Instead, you say, "Yeah, most people don't agree at first. I didn't either." Boom. You've reframed the objection, not as resistance, but as a normal stage of agreement. Now they're not defending their belief, they're subconsciously preparing to move past it. This is what cult recruiters and high-level consultants do. Most people are skeptical at first. That's totally normal. It sounds like reassurance. It feels validating. But it's not neutral. It's psychological aikido. Because now, agreeing doesn't feel like giving in, it feels like progress. And here's where things get darker. Trick number 14, Trojan detail. Imagine this. You're reading a story. It feels real, tangible. I walked into the cafe, the espresso machine hissed, the floor smelled like burnt beans, and the barista gave me that same tired smile. Seems harmless, right? But that one hyper-specific detail, burnt beans, is what your brain clings to. And here's the kicker. Once that detail gets through, the whole story becomes more believable. That's Trojan detail. Slip in one vivid, sensory-rich fragment, and it opens the door for everything else. Politicians use it in anecdotes. Scammers use it in phishing emails. Marketers use it in testimonials. I was skeptical, but then I noticed how my skin actually glowed under the bathroom light. That's when I knew this serum was different. One vivid moment. That's all it takes. The rest, belief, desire, action, rides on its back. But what if you want to control the decision without controlling the belief? Then you need trick number 15, the decoy effect. Let me tell you about 3 coffee options. Small, $3. Medium, $4.50. Large, $4.75. Most people go for the medium, right? Now flip it. Small, $3. Medium, $4.50. Large, $6.50. Suddenly, the medium seems expensive. You go for the small. But here's where it gets real. Now introduce this structure. Small, $3. Medium, $4.50. Large, $4.75. But quietly remove the small cup from display. Most people pick the large. That's the decoy effect. You introduce a third, strategically placed option, not to offer choice, but to steer it. This shows up everywhere. Software pricing tiers, insurance packages, political policy framing, subscription plans. People don't pick what's best. They pick what makes them feel smart. And a well-placed decoy makes one option look smarter than the rest. You don't have to be logical to be persuaded. You just have to feel like you made a good deal. Trick number 16, obvious statement sequence. Ever had someone say, "You've probably noticed the weather's been weird lately." It's hard to trust what you see online. Most people just want to feel understood. You're nodding, right? Each of those is undeniably true, so you agree. But then they say, "That's exactly why we need to rethink how society is structured." Wait, what? But your brain's already in agreement mode, thanks to the obvious statement sequence. It's a persuasion trick that front-loads a conversation with things your brain can't disagree with. So by the time a more controversial idea shows up, you've already said yes 3 times in a row. This trick shows up in political speeches, social media posts, even YouTube videos like this one. We stack truths until disagreement feels like betrayal, not of the person, but of your own logic. And the more you believe you're thinking for yourself, the more vulnerable you are. Trick number 17, social proof injection. Now we're entering dangerous territory. Because this trick doesn't change your thoughts, it changes what you think others are thinking. You walk into a restaurant. One dish says, most popular item this month. Boom, your brain tags it as safer, better, chosen. Now imagine you're on a webinar. The host says, we're getting a lot of comments about this one feature. Even if no comments exist, your brain treats it as truth, because social proof bypasses analysis. You don't evaluate the belief, you evaluate how many people seem to believe it. Want to hijack a belief system? Don't prove it. Just make it look like other people already believe it. And the worst part? We'll never question it, because we don't know we've been influenced. This is why fake reviews work. Why, as seen on TV, still sells. Why one laughing audience member on a sitcom laugh track makes you more likely to laugh, too. The crowd doesn't have to be real. It just has to feel real. Trick number 18. Gratitude bait. This one will sting. You've probably done it. I have too. You give someone something, a compliment, a small gift, a favor, and then you wait. Not consciously, but subtly. You're waiting for the return. That's the reciprocity bias in play. But gratitude bait weaponizes it. Here's how it works. A manager says, hey, I really appreciate how dependable you are. Not many people would stay late without being asked. Now, you're more likely to stay late again, because your brain now sees it as a trait, not a favor. The compliment becomes a commitment hook. Your identity is now on the line. You're such a calm person, I always feel like I can rely on you in conflict. Translation. Stay calm. Don't break the image I just reinforced. This isn't just about praise. It's about control. And in relationships, this shows up constantly. You're just so patient with me. Most people would have snapped. Now, if you get upset later, you're the villain. Gratitude bait isn't always malicious, but it's always powerful. Because once someone frames a behavior as a virtue, you'll fight to maintain it, even when it hurts. We've now moved far beyond persuasion. These aren't tricks to win arguments. These are covert belief edits. Tools that make someone question what they believed and feel like it was their idea to change. But these tools, they still live on the surface. They shape what people say, what they think, how they act. But in the next section, we go beneath the thoughts. We go into emotion, into the limbic system, into the stories beneath the logic, where belief is felt, not argued. And it starts with a trick so subtle, so counterintuitive. It works better the less you try. Section 4. Emotional hijack tactics. Some tricks make you think. These make you feel, whether you want to or not. By now, you've seen how people can influence your decisions, shift your beliefs, even nudge your identity. But we're about to go deeper. Because once you start manipulating emotion in real time, without words, without logic, the rules change. Now you're not negotiating. You're guiding internal weather. Let's start with a trap that looks like freedom, but locks you in tighter the more you struggle. Trick number 19. The double bind. It sounds like a choice, but it's actually a trap wearing a mask of freedom. Here's how it works. Do you want to meet Thursday or Friday? Should we talk now, or after you've calmed down? Would you rather tell me the truth now, or wait until it gets worse? Every option leads where they want you to go, and yet, it feels like a decision. That's the double bind. Used by therapists, interrogators, hostage negotiators, and yes, maybe your partner when they say, "Are you ignoring me on purpose, or did you just forget again?" There's no good answer, because the frame is already hostile. You're not choosing. You're reacting inside someone else's frame. And here's the dangerous part. Once the frame is accepted, your brain stops trying to escape. It just picks the best of two bad doors. It's like emotional chess, and you didn't realize they were playing. Now, let's shift from conversational traps to something more primal, more sensory, more sneaky. Trick number 20, anchoring with objects. Ever wonder why manipulative people leave items behind? A sweater, a book, a charger they forgot. It's not always an accident. Sometimes it's an anchor. Because every time you see that item, it reactivates the emotional state you felt around them. If they made you feel cared for, flattered, flustered, afraid, the object replays that feeling again and again. This is emotional anchoring through physical cues. Salespeople do this with branded pens or mugs. Exes do it with photos. Public speakers do it with touch points, gestures repeated at emotional peaks, so you subconsciously connect the gesture with the emotion. Here's the real twist. You can use this on yourself. Leave a small object, a coin, a scent, a phrase, tied to a peak emotional state, and bring it into tough environments. Over time, your brain begins to associate the anchor with confidence, calm, or clarity. It's Pavlov, but for internal resilience. The object is just the key. The real tool is the feeling. Now, we get vulnerable, but not in the way people think. Trick number 21, selective vulnerability. We've all heard the advice, be vulnerable. It builds trust. And that's true, but only if it's the right kind of vulnerability. If you overshare, you seem unstable. If you undershare, you seem distant. But selective vulnerability, that's a scalpel. You reveal something real, but safe, just enough to lower defenses without lowering your own status. A therapist might say, "Even I struggle with that sometimes." A cult leader might say, "I had doubts once too, but then I found the truth." It's not about being raw, it's about engineering relatability. When done right, it triggers what psychologists call the warmth before competence bias. People trust those who open up first, even when that trust isn't deserved. And here's the kicker, once they open up in return, they're now emotionally invested. They don't just trust you, they feel seen by you. And the second someone feels seen, they'll fight to keep you around. Now, we twist time. Literally. Trick number 22, the time distortion hack. Ever leave a conversation thinking, "Wait, how did we talk for 3 hours? That wasn't an accident." Time perception is emotional, not rational. And the faster someone moves you through emotional states, the more elastic time becomes. Here's the formula. Use contrast, moments of silence followed by intensity. Use rhythm, changes in tone, speed, and emotional pacing. Use loops, stories that circle back to earlier threads. Magicians use this during tricks. Charismatic speakers use it in speeches. Manipulators use it in love bombing. It makes experiences feel deeper, richer, more meaningful, even if they were surface level. Why? Because when your brain can't track time, it inflates meaning. A 30-minute conversation can feel life-changing. Not because of content, but because of emotional pacing. This is how false intimacy is created. Not with truth, with tempo. But what if you want to slow time, to make a moment land harder, without saying a word? That's where this comes in. Trick number 23, the whisper effect. The louder you speak, the more people resist. But whisper something, and people lean in. Literally, physically, because the brain links quiet with importance. Psychologically, a whisper breaks the rhythm. It creates intimacy, urgency, secrecy, all in one move. And it doesn't have to be literal volume. It can be a shift in tone, a pause before a sentence, a line delivered just a little softer. This works in negotiation. Here's the part one don't usually tell people. It works in dating. There's something about you I haven't figured out yet. It works in conflict. You don't actually believe that, do you? And once the whisper lands, it echoes. The brain gives it weight, not because of the words, but because of the delivery. You didn't force attention, you invited it. And that's what makes it stick. Now, it's time. We've been hinting at it since section 1. And now we're here. Trick number 24. The silence weapon. AKA, the one that forces people to reveal more than they intended. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Silence isn't neutral. Silence is pressure. You ask a question. They answer, a little vaguely. So you say nothing. You just hold eye contact. And something happens. Their brain starts racing to fill the space, to escape the tension, to ease the discomfort. So they keep talking, and talking, and suddenly, they've revealed something they didn't mean to. A detail, a fear, a contradiction. You didn't extract it. They gave it away. Because silence is a mirror, and most people are terrified of what it reflects. This trick is used in high-stakes interviews, in therapy, in espionage. But it shows up in everyday life too. A parent waiting quietly after a kid lies. A partner pausing just long enough for guilt to surface. A salesperson letting a price quote sit in the air. The longer the silence lasts, the more pressure builds. And if you can hold that silence, calmly, warmly, without aggression, you hold power. Because here's what no one tells you. Silence doesn't manipulate the person. It manipulates their need to escape the moment. And in that moment, they reveal everything. Remember when I said one trick forces people to reveal more than they intended? This is it. Not because it attacks, but because it leaves space for the truth, and lets their discomfort do the rest. Now that we've hijacked emotion, there's just one level left. The deepest layer. The place where logic disappears. Where stories collapse. Where a single sentence can override years of belief. That's where we're going next. The final section, mind-bending and identity loops. These tricks don't persuade. They erase resistance completely. And the last one, trick number 30, it's not a trick at all. It's a framework. And once you see it, you'll never hear a conversation the same way again. Section 5. Mind control in plain sight. We've traveled from surface-level influence to emotional precision. But now, we step into the final room. This is where influence stops feeling like influence. Where the words don't feel like manipulation anymore, because they sound so casual, so ordinary. But they work. Because these last 6 tricks don't attack your beliefs. They sneak behind them. Let's start with the moment everything seems to glitch, even if just for a second. Trick number 25. Interruption pattern reset. Picture this. You're in a heated argument. You're making your point. Then someone says, "Wait, what color were your socks this morning?" You blink. Everything stalls for a moment. The anger wobbles. the emotional rhythm gets scrambled, and you lose your train of thought. That's a pattern reset. It doesn't push against you. It just breaks the rhythm of your emotional state, and slips something new in while your defenses reboot. Cult leaders use this with sudden humor. Therapists use it with surprise interruptions. Crisis negotiators use it to de-escalate panic. Why it works. Your brain expects a pattern, especially in conflict. When the pattern breaks, it pauses, and in that pause, new thoughts get in that never could have forced their way in. Even something as small as a question, a snap of fingers, or a weird non-sequitur. "Hey, do you feel that breeze?" can reroute an emotional spiral. This is how people break trance states in hypnosis, and how manipulators insert new directions without permission. The trick isn't the interruption. It's what comes after, the moment you're still blinking. But what if you don't want to interrupt? What if you want to match someone so closely, they let you walk right in? Trick number 26. Mirroring micro-expressions. You've heard of mirroring, right? But this isn't just body language. This is emotional fingerprint mirroring, the micro-expressions most people don't notice they're doing. A flicker of eyebrow tension, a specific breath rhythm, a subtle nod they do when they feel understood. When you match these, precisely, subtly, you create a neural resonance. The other person's brain starts to feel safe, but they won't know why. Therapists call this affect attunement. But in persuasion, it's more than empathy. It's emotional camouflage. When done skillfully, the other person will start to finish your thoughts, trust you reflexively, confuse your emotions for their own, and this can be done in seconds. Ever feel someone just gets you, even before you said much? They might have been mirroring you without mirroring you, not copying your posture, but syncing with your emotional rhythm. And once that sync happens, you'll trust them before you understand why. Now, let's bend logic. Not with lies, but with clever reframes. Trick number 27. Disruption and reframe. This one's subtle, but devastating. Imagine you're upset, and someone says, "Totally fair." But what if that frustration is actually just disappointment in disguise? Boom. Instant shift. Nothing denied. No argument. Just a new lens, slid in sideways. Or this. Maybe your anxiety isn't fear, maybe it's energy with no direction yet. It feels kind, insightful, helpful, and it is. But it's also a reframe, and once accepted, it changes your story from the inside out. Used ethically, this is healing. Used manipulatively, it's mind control. Because reframes don't fight your emotions, they rename them. And once your brain accepts the new name, it rewrites the meaning. Advertisers do this with products. Toxic partners do it with blame. Coaches do it with motivation. You're not stuck. You're incubating. Doesn't feel like persuasion, but that's why it works. Because the new frame feels like it came from you. Let's turn up the urgency. Because the next trick doesn't bend meaning. It bends time. Trick number 28. Perceived scarcity amplifier. We know this one intuitively. If it's rare, it's valuable. But the twist here isn't just creating scarcity, it's engineering the perception of scarcity. You've seen it. Only 2 spots left. Offer ends at midnight. I don't usually open up like this. It works. But why? Because the fear of loss triggers more action than the hope of gain. And when something seems like it could vanish, your brain stops evaluating rationally. It just wants to grab before it's gone. But the advanced version, it's psychological. You say things like, "You'll probably move on from this conversation and forget we had it, but part of me hopes this lands before it's too late." That's emotional scarcity. You're not selling anything, you're making the moment feel limited. And that amplifies urgency, not just to act, but to believe. Used carefully, it creates clarity. Used carelessly, it creates regret. But either way, it creates movement. And now, a trick that works before you even speak. Trick number 29. The foot in the mind hack. You've heard of the foot in the door technique. This is deeper. This is when you install an idea in someone's mind by letting them complete it. Let's go back to the very beginning of this video. I didn't tell you what happened. I asked if something had happened. Have you ever had a conversation where you walked away thinking, "Wait, how did I agree to that?" That wasn't just a lead-in. That was the foot in your mind. Because your brain had to search for a memory. And in doing so, it said, "Well, yeah, actually, there was that one time." And now, you're not learning a trick. You're proving it to yourself. That's the power. This isn't about convincing. It's about activating a frame they already believe and letting them do the heavy lifting. You didn't insert the belief. You just asked the right question and let their own mind run the program. That brings us to the end and the beginning, because there's one trick left, and it's the one I used on you before you even realized. Trick number 30. Conversational inception reloaded. Remember that trick I said you'd already fallen for? This is it. Trick number 30. At the very start, I didn't ask you to believe anything. I just asked a question. Have you ever had a conversation where you walked away thinking, "Wait, how did I agree to that?" And your mind did something automatic. It answered. It searched. It began to build a story around that question. And that story, it wasn't mine. It was yours. That's conversational inception reloaded. Not just planting an idea, but creating space for someone's own narrative to take root inside your frame. Because once your memory becomes part of this conversation, I'm not the one persuading you anymore. You are. That's the final trick. And it's not even a trick, really. It's a framework. The best persuasion doesn't push. It doesn't even pull. It simply asks the right question, at the right emotional angle, in the right moment, and then lets your own mind do the rest. You've just seen 30 of the most powerful mind tricks ever studied, used by politicians, therapists, marketers, cult leaders, and sometimes, your best friend. Some of them were subtle, some disarming, some maybe even a little uncomfortable. But now, they're yours. The tools, the language, the framework. Use them to protect yourself. Use them to communicate better. Use them to build truth, not just win arguments. Because the real power isn't in the tricks. It's in knowing when not to use them. Now tell me this. Which trick hit the hardest? Which one have you used without realizing? Drop it in the comments. I read every one. And if you want a bonus video where I break down how this script used 14 of these tricks in real time, let me know. Until then, watch your conversations closely. Because now you see the game. And that means, you're not the pawn anymore. You're the player. One final truth before you go. Every person watching this video is now a little more dangerous. The only question is, how will you use what you now know? Just remember, The most powerful trick is the one you don't even notice.